আমার কি হবে, কি হবে, ভবরানে ভবে আনি যে যে ভবে ডোবানি যাবায়।
In the spring of 1906, Sri Aurobindo toured Bengal with Bipin Chandra Pal, who had just founded the daily newspaper, Bande Mataram. Bipin asked Sri Aurobindo to become assistant editor, and he accepted at once. From its inception, the newspaper attacked without fear and without disguise the coercive system of government and advocated radical change. Its blistering attack on the bureaucracy left the British officials gasping for breath. Sri Aurobindo's preoccupation was to openly declare complete and absolute independence as the aim of political action in India, and he insisted on this persistently in the pages of the Bande Mataram. He was the first politician in India who had the courage to do this in public, and he was immediately successful. The party took up the word Swaraj, self-rule, to express its ideal of total independence, and it soon spread everywhere. In one of the first issues of the newspaper, Sri Aurobindo declared,
"The true policy of the Congress movement should have been, from the beginning, to gather together under its flag all the elements of strength that exist in this huge country. The Brahman Pandit and the Muslim Maulavi, the laborer and the artisan, the coolie at his work and the peasant in his field, none of these should have been left out of the sphere of our activities. For each is a strength, a unit of force, and in politics the victory is to the side which can marshal the largest and the most closely serried number of such units and handle them most skillfully, not to those who can bring forward the best arguments or talk the most eloquently."
Already, Sri Aurobindo was calling for unity, and in a short time, Bande Mataram became the spearhead of a new political party in Bengal. The Nationalist Party was at once successful, and its newspaper began to circulate throughout India. Bande Mataram came into being at a great and critical hour for the nation. It was almost unique in journalistic history, in the influence it exercised, in converting the mind of a people and preparing it for revolution. The articles were so cleverly written that they violated the spirit of the law while remaining strictly within its limits. But Bande Mataram did not confine itself to politics and the stirring questions of the day. It also spoke of Indian history and culture in order to awaken the people to India's glorious past. Education was then considered a central key to India's emancipation. And just a few days after Bande Mataram began, the Bengal National College in Calcutta opened with Sri Aurobindo as its principal. In December of that year, a session of the Indian National Congress was organized in Calcutta under the presidentship of Dadabhai Naoroji. During this session, a resolution laying down Swaraj as the goal of the Congress was passed for the first time. About the same time, the Anglo-Indian bureaucrats issued a spate of ordinances and savagely tightened the sedition laws. John Morley, the Secretary of State for India, though a high-ranking official himself, was alarmed at the severe penalties for seditious writings. "These sentences are monstrous and outrageous and can never be supported," he wrote to Lord Minto. "I must confess to you that I am watching with the deepest concern and dismay the thundering sentences that are being passed for sedition. We must keep order, but excess of severity is not the path to order. On the contrary, it is the path to the bomb." A few months after the Congress session in Calcutta, the nationalist leader, Lala Lajpat Rai, the Lion of the Punjab, was arrested. Sri Aurobindo was roused from his sleep and given the news. At once he penned these words:
"The hour for speeches and fine writings is past. The bureaucracy has thrown down the gauntlet. We take it up. Men of the Punjab, race of the lions, show these men who would stamp you into the dust, that for one Lajpat they have taken away, 100 Lajpat will arise in his place. Let them hear 100 times louder your war cry, Jai Hindustan."
On the 24th of July, 1907, Bhupendranath Dutt, Swami Vivekananda's brother, was imprisoned for writing seditious material that appeared in Yugantar. A week later, there was a search of the Bande Mataram office, and on the 16th of August, Sri Aurobindo was arrested for sedition. The news of Babu Aurobindo Ghosh's arrest spread throughout India like wildfire. Relatively unknown outside Bengal, this young man became famous overnight, and his name became a household word all over India. The next morning, Sri Aurobindo was released on bail. Rabindranath Tagore went to see Sri Aurobindo at number 12 Wellington Street. He said, ironically, as he embraced him, "What? You have deceived us! You did not go to jail!" Sri Aurobindo replied with a smile,
"Not for long will you have to wait."
It was while the sedition case was going on that Tagore published his poem, Homage to Aurobindo. Rabindranath, O Aurobindo, bows to thee. O friend, my country's friend, O voice incarnate, free of India's soul. Amid this song triumphant, vast, that encircles me, Rabindranath, O Aurobindo, bows to thee. The case opened on the 26th of August. 10 days later, Sri Aurobindo was acquitted. But the assessment of the Intelligence Bureau was categorical. Aurobindo Ghosh was the chief of the Yugantar band. He has exercised a greater influence over the revolutionary movement in India than perhaps any other man. After the Bande Mataram sedition case, Sri Aurobindo became the recognized leader of nationalism in Bengal. In December 1907, he led the party at the session of the district conference at Midnapore. And 1 week later, at a meeting in Calcutta, he delivered his first public speech. Then, Sri Aurobindo and other nationalists from all over India traveled to Gujarat for the Indian National Congress session at Surat. There, a vehement clash between the moderates and the nationalists took place, resulting in a break between the two factions. Sri Aurobindo recalled this session later on.
History very seldom records the things that were decisive but took place behind the veil. It records the show in front of the curtain. Very few people know that it was I, without consulting Tilak, who gave the order that led to the breaking of the Congress and was responsible for the refusal to join the newfangled moderate convention, which were the two decisive happenings at Surat.
This caused much amazement and discomfiture in the minds of the moderate leaders, who complained that the people had refused to listen to their old and tried leaders and clamored against them. But at the bidding of a young man new to politics, they had obeyed in disciplined silence, as if in a single body. But Aurobindo Babu was no ordinary young man, and very soon he was going to experience the first decisive turn of his inner life. After 4 years of pranayam and other practices on his own, with only a few minor results, he had a complete arrest and was at a loss. He asked Baran to arrange a meeting with someone who would help him in his sadhana. Soon, just after the Congress session was over, he left Surat for Baroda to meet the Marathi yogi Vishnu Bhaskar Lele.
Lele and I went to Sardar Majumdar's place. On the top floor, in a room, we were shut up for 3 days. Sit down, Lele told me. Look, and you will see that your thoughts come into you from outside. Before they enter, fling them back. I sat down and looked, and saw to my astonishment that it was so. I saw and felt concretely the thoughts approaching and was able to push it back concretely before it came inside. In 3 days, really in one, I got an experience which most yogis get only at the end of a long yoga, got it without wanting or trying after it. My mind became full of an eternal silence. From then on, I began to think from above the brain and have done so ever since. As a result, the whole being became quiet, and in 7 days, I got the nirvanic experience.
But for Sri Aurobindo, as we will see, the nirvana experience was not an end in itself. He was still one of the leaders of the movement for India's independence, and when he got an invitation to address a meeting in Bombay, he was in a fix. His mind had become blank, emerged in a perfect silence. So, how was he to deliver a speech? Lele told him to make namaskar to the audience and wait, and speech would come to him from some other source than the mind. So, in fact, the speech came. And ever since, all speech, writing, thought, and impulsion to action came to him from the same source, above the brain mind. During the next few months, he gave many speeches and wrote scores of articles in this condition of absolute inner silence, inspiring millions of Bengalis and others in India. While Sri Aurobindo engaged in public work, Baran continued his revolutionary activities. He planned to assassinate Douglas Kingsford, the merciless and sadistic presidency magistrate of Calcutta. On the 30th of April, two young revolutionaries from Baran's group, Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chakki, attempted to kill the judge by throwing a bomb into the carriage they thought he was in. But Kingsford was seated in a different carriage, and the bomb tragically killed two British women by mistake. Prafulla, resisting the attempt to arrest him, shot himself with his last bullet. But Khudiram Bose was arrested. After a summary trial, he was sentenced to death, a sentence he accepted quietly with a smile. Inspired by the speeches of Sri Aurobindo and Sister Nivedita, Khudiram had joined the revolutionary movement when he was just 15. He was 18 when he was hanged, becoming one of the first freedom fighters in Bengal to be executed by the British. Two days after the bombing, while Sri Aurobindo was still sleeping, the police charged up the stairs of his residence, revolvers in hand, and arrested him. Simultaneously, many members of the secret society were arrested. Among them, Baran and Ulaskar Dutt, who were found at the Maniktola garden. All of them were taken to the Lal Bazar police station and, 3 days later, to the Presidency jail in Alipore. Here are some glimpses of Sri Aurobindo's life in prison, as told by himself.
When I was arrested, I did not know that that day would mean the end of a chapter of my life, and that there stretched before me a year's imprisonment, during which period all my human relations would cease, that for a whole year I would have to live beyond the pale of society like an animal in a cage. And when I would re-enter the world of activity, it would not be the old familiar Aurobindo Ghosh. Rather, it would be a new being, a new character, intellect, life, mind, embarking upon a new course of action that would come out of the ashram at Alipore. I have spoken of a year's imprisonment. It would have been more appropriate to speak of a year's living in a forest, in an ashram, hermitage. My solitary cell was 9 feet long and 5 or 6 feet in width. It had no windows. In front stood strong iron bars. This cage was my appointed abode. Outside was a small courtyard with stony grounds, a high brick wall with a small wooden door. A dish and a cup were all the utensils that were allowed to each of us. This cup was like a member of the Indian Civil Service, intended to serve any and every purpose. It was meant for use in the water closet, in the bath, and at meals, on which last occasion it was to serve a dual function, being used for holding our dal or vegetable curry and also as a drinking cup. It is only in an English jail that one can find a thing like this cup, and it is invaluable as a means of making a man give up all ideas of cleanliness and purity. The causes of hardship were no doubt there, but since my faith in divine mercy was strong, I had to suffer only for the first few days. Thereafter, the mind had transcended these sufferings and grown incapable of feeling any hardship. That is why, when I recollect my prison life, instead of anger or sorrow, I feel like laughing. After the jailer had seen to the blankets and the plates and bowl and left, I began to watch, sitting on the blanket, the scene before me. This solitary confinement seemed to me much better than the lockup at Lal Bazar. Here, the walls of the room seemed to come closer, eager to embrace one like the all-pervading Brahman. Here, since the door to the courtyard remained open, by sitting near the bars, one could see the open spaces and the movement of the prisoners. Alongside the courtyard wall stood a tree, its green foliage a sight for sore eyes. The prisoners in the neighboring cowshed would take out in front of the room the cows for grazing. Both cow and cowherd were daily and delightful sights. The solitary confinement at Alipore was a unique lesson in love. Before coming here, even in society, my affections were confined to a rather narrow circle, and the closed emotions would rarely include birds and animals. At Alipore, I could feel how deep could be the love of man for all created things. Men, cows, ants, birds are moving, flying, singing, speaking, yet all is nature's game. Behind all this is a great, pure, detached spirit, wrapped in a serene delight. Before imprisonment, I was in the habit of sitting down for meditation for an hour in the morning and evening. In this solitary prison, not having anything else to do, I tried to meditate for a longer period. My sadhana, before and afterwards, was not founded upon books, but upon personal experiences that crowded on me from within. But in the jail, I had the Gita and the Upanishads with me, practiced the yoga of the Gita, and meditated with the help of the Upanishads. These were the only books from which I found guidance. In my solitary cell, I was also hearing constantly the voice of Vivekananda speaking to me and felt his presence. He visited me for 15 days and spoke only on a special and limited but very important field of spiritual experience until I could grasp the whole thing. He went on teaching and impressed upon my mind the working of the higher consciousness. It is he who first gave me a clue in the direction of the supermind. This clue led me to see how the truth consciousness works in everything. Soon, the prison ceased to appear to be a prison at all. The high wall, those iron bars, the white wall, the green-leaved tree shining in sunlight, it seemed as if these commonplace objects were not unconscious at all, but that they were vibrating with a universal consciousness. They loved me and wished to embrace me, or so I felt. Once in a while, it seemed as if God Himself was standing under the tree to play upon His flute of delight, and with its sheer charm to draw my very soul out. Always, it seemed as if someone was embracing me, holding me on one's lap. The manifestation of these emotions overpowered my whole body and mind. A pure and white peace reigned everywhere, but it is impossible to describe that. The hard cover of my life opened up, and a spring of love for all creatures gushed from within.
On the 19th of October, 1908, the hearing for the trial began in the Sessions Court. The presiding judge was Charles Porton Beechcroft, who had been a scholar at Cambridge at the same time as Sri Aurobindo. The main charges were waging war against His Majesty the King, Emperor of India, and conspiracy to deprive His Majesty of the sovereignty of British India.
In the Sessions Court, the accused were confined in a large prisoner's cage, and here, during the whole day, I remained absorbed in my meditation, attending little to the trial and hardly listening to the evidence. Chittaranjan Das, one of my nationalist collaborators and a famous lawyer, had put aside his large practice and devoted himself for months to my defense. I left the case entirely to him and troubled no more about it, for I had been assured from within and knew that I would be acquitted. But now, let me speak about the companions of my days of trouble, the boys who had been accused along with me. Watching their behavior in the courtroom, I could well guess that a new age had dawned. A new type of children had begun to live on the mother's lap. Looking at these lads, one felt as if the liberal, daring, puissant men of an earlier age with a different training had come back to India. That fearless and innocent look in their eyes, their words breathing power, their carefree, delighted laughter, even in the midst of great danger, the undaunted courage, cheerfulness of mind, absence of despair or grief, all this was a symptom not of the inert Indians of those days, but of a new age, a new race, and a new activity. If these were murderers, then one would say that the bloody shadow of killing had not fallen across their nature, in which there was nothing at all of cruelty, recklessness, or bestiality.
তোর কোলের ছেলে যাবে বলে কাঁদিস কেন মা তোর কোলের ছেলে যাবে বলে কাঁদিস কেন মা হাসি মুখে বিদায় দে মা ফিরে ডাকিস না
The trial continued for about 6 months. In all, 208 witnesses were examined and cross-examined at length, and more than 1,500 articles were presented as evidence, including bombs, revolvers, and acids. During this time, Sri Aurobindo spent most of his time in deep meditation, despite the noise, agitation, and discomfort of the court. According to prosecution counsel Eardley Norton, he was treated with the reverence of a king. As a matter of fact, he was regarded as the leader not merely of Bengal, but of the whole country. When the time came for his lawyer, Chittaranjan Das, to conclude his argument, he said in a prophetic voice, "My appeal to you is this, that long after this controversy is hushed in silence, long after this turmoil, this agitation ceases, long after he is dead and gone, he will be looked upon as the poet of patriotism, as the prophet of nationalism, and the lover of humanity. Long after he is dead and gone, his words will be echoed and re-echoed, not only in India, but across distant seas and lands. Therefore, I say that the man in his position is not only standing before the bar of this court, but before the bar of the High Court of History." On the 6th of May, 1909, Judge Beechcroft delivered his judgment. Sri Aurobindo and more than half of the others were acquitted. Baran and Ulaskar Dutt were sentenced to death by hanging, but were given 1 week to appeal. A few months later, the appellate court delivered its judgment, commuting their death sentences to transportation for life to the cellular jail on the Andaman Islands. When he came out of jail, Sri Aurobindo found the whole political aspect of the country altered. Most of the nationalist leaders were in jail or in self-imposed exile, and there was a general mood of discouragement and depression. Determined to continue the struggle, he held weekly meetings in Calcutta and gave speeches all over Bengal. 3 weeks after his release, he spoke publicly at Uttarpara of his yoga and his spiritual experiences in the Alipore jail. There were about 600 people in the audience, but he was heard in the pin-drop silence.
When I was arrested and hurried to the Lal Bazar lockup, I was shaken in faith for a while, for I could not look into the heart of God's intention. Then it seemed to me that He spoke to me and said, I have brought you here to teach you what you could not learn for yourself and to train you for my work. Then He placed the Gita in my hands. His strength entered into me and I was able to do the sadhana of the Gita. I was not only to understand intellectually, but to realize what Sri Krishna demanded of Arjuna and what he demands of those who aspire to do his work. To be free from repulsion and desire, to do work for him without the demand for fruit, to renounce self-will and become a passive and faithful instrument in his hands, to have an equal heart for high and low, friend and opponent, success and failure, yet not to do his work negligently. I realized what the Hindu religion meant. We speak often of the Hindu religion, of the Sanatan Dharma, but few of us really know what that religion is. Other religions are preponderatingly religions of faith and profession, but the Sanatana Dharma is life itself. It is a thing that has not so much to be believed as lived.
The reception Sri Aurobindo got at Uttarpara was extraordinary. But when the editor of the Hitavadi read Sri Aurobindo's speech, he told Amar Chatterjee that it was wrong for Sri Aurobindo to speak about his spiritual experiences. Laughing, Amar replied, "My Guru creates Shastra. He does not follow it." About a month after his release from jail, Sri Aurobindo began a new English weekly, Karma Yogin, a weekly review of national religion, literature, science, and philosophy. In the first issue of the review, Sri Aurobindo wrote,
"When spirituality is lost, all is lost. This is the fate from which we have narrowly escaped by the resurgence of the soul of India in nationalism. But that resurgence is not yet complete. There is a sentiment of Indianism. There is not yet the knowledge. There is a vague idea. There is no definite conception or deep insight. We have yet to know ourselves, what we were, are, and may be, what we did in the past, and what we are capable of doing in the future, our history and our mission. This is the first and most important work which the Karma Yogin sets for itself to popularize this knowledge. The Vedanta or Sufism, the temple or the mosque, Nanak and Kabir and Ramdas, Chaitanya or Guru Govind, Brahmin and Kayastha and Namashudra, whatever national assets we have, indigenous or acclimatized, it will seek to make known to put in its right place and appreciate.
For about a year, Sri Aurobindo ran this weekly journal almost single-handedly, as well as a second weekly in Bengali, Dharma, in which he wrote in detail about his experiences in jail. At the same time, as the foremost nationalist leader in Bengal, he toured the province and gave more than a dozen speeches. But repression of the freedom movement was in full swing. The government was determined to imprison or deport Sri Aurobindo. And in the third week of July, the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal, Edward Norman Baker, approved a proposal to deport him. This news came to the knowledge of Sister Nivedita, and she informed Sri Aurobindo. But he countered the move by publishing in the Karma Yogin a signed article in which he spoke of the plan to deport him. He hoped that his open letter would kill the idea of deportation, and in fact, it did. But determined to get rid of Sri Aurobindo, the government decided a few months later to arrest him for sedition. As Sri Aurobindo later recounted,
I was in the Karma Yogin office when I received the word on information given by a high-placed police official that the office would be searched the next day and myself arrested. While I was listening to animated comments from those around on the approaching event, I suddenly received a command from above in a voice well known to me in 3 words: Go to Chandarnagor. In 10 minutes or so, I was in the boat for Chandarnagor, and a few hours later, we reached our destination while it was still dark.
At Chandarnagor, a local revolutionary, Motilal Roy, made arrangements for Sri Aurobindo's stay. Several times, the hiding place had to be changed, for he might have been discovered if he had stayed too long in one place. Everything was done in a cloak and dagger manner, so that nobody, except Motilal and a few friends, knew where Sri Aurobindo was. Confidentially, he informed Sister Nivedita the day after his departure and asked her to continue the Karma Yogin in his place. She consented to do this. He also sent her an amusing letter to be published in the newspaper. We are greatly astonished to learn from the local press that Sri Jut Aurobindo Ghosh has disappeared from Calcutta and is now interviewing the Mahatmas in Tibet. We are ourselves unaware of this mysterious disappearance. As a matter of fact, Sri Aurobindo is in our midst, and if he is doing any astral business with Kutumi or any of the other great rishis, the fact is unknown to his other koshas. Only as he requires perfect solitude and freedom from disturbance for his sadhana for some time, his address is being kept a strict secret. Indeed, for the next few weeks, Sri Aurobindo remained entirely engaged in sadhana. He plunged into solitary meditation and ceased all other activity. But a few weeks after his arrival at Chandarnagor, while some of his friends were thinking of sending him to France, and he was wondering what to do next, he heard the same familiar voice from above give him a clear command: go to Pondicherry. On the 31st of March 1910, Sri Aurobindo left Chandernagore for Calcutta, and the next morning boarded the steamer ship Duplex, which took him to Pondicherry, the largest French colony in India. His departure from Calcutta marked the end of his active involvement in politics and the beginning of a new chapter of his life, a new adventure into the future of the earth. Some people thought that Sri Aurobindo left politics because he felt that he could do nothing or that he was afraid. Here is his own explanation.
I did not leave politics because I felt I could do nothing more there. Such an idea was very far from me. I came away because I did not want anything to interfere with my yoga, and because I got a very distinct command in the matter.
Just a few days before he left Calcutta, Sri Aurobindo wrote his last article for the Karma Yogan.
In all the events of the last year and a half, the voice of the Divine Teacher can be heard crying to us, "Abandon that you may possess, do my will, and know yourselves, purify yourselves, cease to follow your fancies." He that has ears, let him hear. Knowledge will not come without self-communion, without light from within, not even the knowledge of the practical steps that can lead to success. Every step that is taken in the light of a lower wisdom will fail until the truth is driven home. The work that was begun at Dakshineshwar is far from finished. It is not even understood. That which Vivekananda received and strove to develop has not yet materialized. The truth of the future that Bijoy Goswami hid within himself has not yet been revealed utterly to his disciples. A less discreet revelation prepares, a more concrete force manifests, but where it comes, when it comes, none knoweth.
On the 4th of April 1910, late afternoon, Sri Aurobindo arrived in Pondicherry. This was his final destination, for he remained there for the rest of his life. There, a new chapter of his journey was about to begin. A new exploration into the future of mankind was about to take place. An adventure into the unknown and the unexpected discovery of a new world and a luminous future for man and the earth. With wind and the weather beating round me, up to the hill and the moorland I go. Who will come with me? Who will climb with me? Wade through the brook and tramp through the snow. Not in the petty circle of cities, Cramped by your doors and your walls I dwell. Over me God is blue in the welkin. Against me the wind and the storm rebel. I sport with solitude here in my regions of misadventure, have made me a friend who would live largely, who would live freely, here to the wind-swept uplands ascend. I am the Lord of tempest and mountain, I am the spirit of freedom and pride. Stark must he be, and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks at my side.